Ryan. I am here with my partner, Mark Rizzo. This is show number 2. You believe that?
And the first one went so well. This
We
one's going to be even
survived.
better.
We survived the first one, the introduction. So this is a weekly podcast. It's about music and then whatever else we happen to want to talk about, but a lot about our lives in the music industry and how long we've worked both in radio and records. I from the radio side, Mark from the record side of the business. And we thought that this episode would deal with our first real celebrity encounters. So, Mark, take it away. What's your first celebrity encounter that you had?
Well, we could break it up a couple of ways. We could say my first celebrity encounter in the business, my first celebrity encounter in life, or which way do you want to go? Because when I was in college, I worked at American Airlines. So we would see celebrity after celebrity after celebrity. We can do an entire podcast on what went on at that airport.
I'm
But
sure.
it was pretty wild and amazing. But it up, I probably saw more famous people and celebrities at the airport than obviously had the opportunity to work with. But if it's going to be music related, then I guess, as we said in the first episode, my first job at A&M in the mailroom, I would obviously see the artists that would come up to the record label. So I would see Bryan Adams and Jeffrey Osborne and people like that. But being in the mailroom, you didn't have a lot of interaction with them, but they would come up. I remember Jeffrey Osborne came up to A&M and he was showing off a pair of brand new shoes that he bought. And then I remember Bryan Adams came up to the office and he was playing at Madison Square Garden that night. And the next day I found out that he decided to take the train to Madison Square Garden rather than a car or a cab or a limo. And
Yeah.
people on the train were freaking out. But he was always very friendly and cool. He was like a kid who was a rock star, but he was probably the first two encounters were artists I met at A&M.
I had heard that he and his dad didn't get along. His dad didn't like that he did rock and roll.
Hmm.
That's what I heard about Bryan Adams, but
But,
never met the guy actually.
yeah, well, I just got a chance to meet him a couple of years back, and I was working some projects off of BMG, and we spoke about the A&M days. Of course, he didn't remember me, but I told him I had remembered him, and I remember being at A&M, and when I met him, I of course asked him the question everybody asks him: "Why did you name the song Summer '69?" And he turns to me and says, "What do you think?" I'll never forget that.
And what'd you say?
I laughed.
You didn't answer him?
No, I got embarrassed at that point. What was I going to say? I think I know what you mean.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. So what would be, I guess, what was the weirdest then celebrity encounter you had? Maybe just the first, but the most bizarre, like, did someone while you were working at a label request something you had to fulfill that was like, oh, that's interesting.
Um, No, I mean, The Strangers is what I told you in the first episode. For those that hopefully watched the first one, was my encounters with Sting. He was just very aloof and not very friendly, at least to the messenger guy. But I mean,
Right.
there were no freaks or any crazy stories that you hear that that were in the artists' riders of stuff, where they have to have certain color jelly beans and things. But no, I mean, even when I progressed and went over to Arista Records, all the artists there were pretty cool, and nobody had any crazy perks that you could say, "Oh boy, this one's a nut." I mean, you knew Aretha Franklin was afraid to fly. You knew Carly Simon was afraid to fly. I mean, they had stuff like that, but there wasn't any demands that were out of control that we had to deal with in interacting with them.
Maybe they thought you would be the one of those that would run off to the National Enquirer.
Well, I mean,
Sell your story.
I had heard stories of certain artists that they said, don't look them in the eyes and don't make contact and don't
Oh
speak to
yeah.
them. But I never really ran into anything like that that would say, hey, don't look at me.
I'll tell you a quick one. This is not my first one, but I'll tell you a quick one at Sirius XM. They had passed a memo around. It's probably about, oh God, 12 years ago now. And they had passed an email memo around saying that Eric Clapton was going to be in the building and you were not to engage him in any way, shape, or form. If you happen to come upon him, do not engage.
Hmm.
So, okay, fine. What do I do? So I go to the restroom, right? Do my business, go up to the sink to wash my hands, and who comes out of the stall and stands at the sink next to me? Eric Clapton. And he's washing his hands. He looks over at me and says, "How you doing?" Now, I could just be a total jerk and follow the memo and not engage him and make, be so subhuman, so to speak. But, there's Eric Clapton. What am I supposed to do? Not say hello? How are you? So I did.
Of course.
Um, and it was just him and I in there. So we were washing our hands. He said, "Hey," and I said, "Oh, fine. Mr. Clapton, how are you? Call me Eric." And I can't even do
Nice.
his how he talks, but
Well,
and then that was it. I have a good day, and then I walked out. But
yeah, well, I mean, I guess they're expecting, let's say he was in the waiting room before he was getting interviewed, if somebody had gone over and said, hey, can I have an autograph and stuff like that.
yeah,
I mean, that's
yeah.
probably what they meant. I
But
mean,
you know as
casual conversation is fine.
and you also know as well as I do that a lot of times it's the manager that wants to be the bad guy. The guy doesn't want to be inundated, but he doesn't want to come off as being the bad guy or the bad the it works both ways with females or males, but they don't want to come off being the bad person. So they're usually gracious, even if they're annoyed.
Right.
They
They
try
make
to
the
be
manager do the
gracious.
dirty
Then
work.
they get the
Yeah.
manager all. But I just felt like it'd be awful rude of me not to acknowledge him when he first addressed me. It's not like I ran up to him.
Right.
I'm washing my hands, keeping quiet, and he says, "Hi, how are you?" You
Hmm.
know, it's kind of just the
Well,
human thing. If it whether it's Eric Clapton or it's Mark Rizzo, I'm gonna say hello.
of
You know,
course. Well, I have one that you'll get a kick out of because, as we said in the first episode about our dying passion for the Mets and maybe not so much passion for the Yankees, but I was a kid. I was a kid coming off a plane in Miami because my best buddy had moved to Miami. And I was
hmm
at LaGuardia Airport, and off the plane was Reggie Jackson. And if you're a kid, even if you're not a Yankee fan, this guy was blowing it up.
right.
So, and I stutter. So as a kid, I was even more of a stutterer. So I was a little intimidated to go over to him. So I finally got the guts to go over to him at the baggage claim area, right? So I go over there with my hand shaking with some piece of paper, a pen that I had. And I said, Mr. Jackson, can I have your autograph? So he said, first we'll do this and then we'll do that. Like first he had to pick up his bag and then do that. So that's all he had to say to me. So at that
Oh
point, I
wow.
walked away. I walked away from him and he said, wait, no, 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 come back, come back. So I guess he realized that he was kind of short with me, but I don't
Yeah.
think I was being rude. I don't think I was interrupting. I was a kid. Maybe I should have waited till he got his bag or something, but
Well, at
once
least he
he
had the
snapped at me,
self-awareness not to, keep going with it like, oh, wait a minute, I don't want to, mess up this kid.
first we'll do
Yeah.
this, then we'll do that. I don't know where the autograph is. I might have thrown it away.
So, as far as professionally, my first celebrity encounter, believe it or not, came when I worked at a radio station in Northwest New Jersey. I was doing mornings. This is like my third, maybe fourth radio station, but I was doing mornings at this point. And I'm not going to count when I did the stop before that when I was in the out at the east end of Long Island, and we spent a summer doing all sorts of events with. I don't know who in the sales department hooked this up, but this was the greatest thing ever for all the guys that were on the staff. We were doing these weekend events with the latest penthouse pets
Hmm.
at these beach clubs. So that was interesting enough. But they weren't really celebrities. So I'm doing mornings and um Gilbert Godfrey
I know him.
had a big, he had a moment in the 80s and into the 90s where he was in a bunch of movies and he was kind of big on the stand-up circuit. So he was coming to one of the like local theaters up there to do a show. So we had him in on the morning show and he was hysterical and but so uncontrollable. Like I had
Uh,
to do this live read for a car place that I won't name by name, but suffice it to say the name was close enough to where he said, "What do you mean condom motors? Condom? What are they doing? Putting prophylactics on cars?" And he goes on condom, kept playing on saying condom. I said, and I was trying to be like, that's not, and he just wouldn't let it go. And I'm thinking, the boss is going to come in here, the owner of the station. He is going to, if he doesn't fire me, he's going to suspend me because this is like a massive client, right? These people spend a lot of money with the station. And he kept just saying, Condom Motors, Condom, that's a great name. He was going on and on and on. And God bless, Gilbert's not with us anymore at this point. But so he kept saying that. And of course, you're laughing because he's funny. But I'm at the same time, I'm thinking I'm in big, big, big trouble. And turns out the client loved it. They
Well,
got more
of course they
business
do.
off
Yeah.
of what he said and had people coming in afterwards, and people still were saying it months later. But the owner wasn't happy when he first saw me. He thought, "Oh my God, they're going to pull their business. We're going to lose. This is a big deal." But it turned out to not be as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, but how can he blame you for something that Gilbert's doing?
No, I know, but I was on the interview. Like I did a live read. I could have, finished the live read and quickly shuffled them out, or tried to get them out, but it became this thing, and I didn't want to cut him off and cause a big huge stir. And he was joking. It was all a joke.
Right, but
Um,
still.
but still, yeah, I thought it was
So,
going to be.
so like what you asked about, what was the hardest thing for us with artists, or they had any demands? What about on your side when you've been asked to interview somebody? Is there anyone you've been interviewed or had to interview that you were scared to interview, or they gave you questions? Well, don't bring this up or don't bring that up. Or they're like a lot of demands that artist said, well, we'll do the interview, but don't ask me about my recent divorce or my wife or blah blah blah.
There was a couple things. The one time I talked to Bon Jovi, they didn't want to talk. John didn't want to talk about Richie and the problems going on there. Um, but usually if someone wanted you to stay away from something, I didn't go there. I wasn't there to be like a Howard Stern and just,
Right.
do it anyway. There was a couple times we did an interview at Sirius XM with a couple of members of the band Journey. I won't name them, but suffice it to say they had not slept much the night before. We're up all night partying,
Oh boy.
and some things got said that after they left, we got frantic calls from not only the label but management saying, "Please don't air that dirty laundry."
Right.
And it was just stuff that we didn't even go seeking after. It just they couple of them came forth with it. I think it was because they were still inebriated from being out the night before.
That's tough.
So yeah, yeah. So, but no, as far as I usually would stay away if I mean, it doesn't really help your cause to go approaching it because even if they're polite and say something, they're going to end the interview, and
Right.
then you're never going to get them again.
Exactly.
You
You don't
know,
believe it.
yeah, it's just not worth it if they really don't want to talk about. Now, if it's something that if it's an artist well, don't ask me about like my past big hits because I don't play those anymore. It's like, well, no,
I got stories
sorry.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, but that's why fans come to see you. So no, I'm not gonna
Exactly.
not do that. But if it's a personal matter or a family matter or something like that, or they've been in, that kind of thing, they shouldn't do interviews if that's the situation, or respect them asking you not to get into that particular thing.
Well, I had an artist when I worked at Columbia. After I left Arista, I went to Columbia, and there was an artist that he agreed to do a lounge for one of the big radio stations in New York, and he was difficult to work with. I think he had just a rebellious spirit about him, and he didn't really want to be associated with the record label. The record label's, big business and corporate. I'm not selling out, But meanwhile, he had to sell the album that he was trying to promote.
Yeah.
But being said, he told me, and I'm not going to play the hits. I said, okay. So I have to deal with a radio station that they have this artist coming in, and they know 6 or 8 of his hits that they want him to play for the audience that's there to hear. You always walk in the thin line when you have an artist doing a new album and people want to hear the old songs and the hits, and you have the artist who wants to continue developing and doing, brand new material. And that's always, you have to have a fine mix between the hits and the new stuff. I
Yeah.
think like the same article I did that McCartney says he always knows when he plays something new, everybody gets up and goes to the bathroom. So it's difficult. But in having to deal with this situation, I said, well, they're expecting you to play some of the hits. At that point, I was just happy to hear some of the hits. And he was just probably just pushing my buttons as the record company guy to break our chops. And once he got out there and he saw the audience, he played the hits. But
Yeah.
they want to be difficult. They want to push back against, oh well, I don't always do that every day. I mean, that's you know ridiculous. I had another band I worked with at Arista, and they were very happy to play all their hits. They said, "To me, they pay, we play." And it's as simple as that.
They pay, we play.
They pay, we
And
play.
you know what? It's very interesting because we had at one point when I was doing the 80s channel at Sirius, we had Lionel Richie come by. Didn't want to talk about any of his older stuff. It was all this new album, new, 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 new. But nobody cared. There was nothing on it. Nobody wanted to hear.
Hmm.
He didn't get a lot of takers. We did it anyway on the 80s channel, but we broke it up into little pieces and then we'd spotlight some of the music. But after that flop, basically, he came back a few years later and was willing to do anything and everything, talk about his hits. I understand that, you've played them so many times and but these are the songs people love you for. And I think they'll tolerate the newer stuff when you do it. So my approach always was, as we started doing this on the 80s channel, you get further and further away from that decade, right? But that's what these people are known for. But if they put something new out, my whole attitude was like, okay, we'll have I'll have one of the VJs, Mark Goodman, Nina Blackwood, Alan Hunter, or Martha Quinn when Martha was still there. I'll have one of them interview them and they'll talk about a couple of the new songs and we'll pick one of the new songs off the album and we'll play it. We'll play it because the 80s audience that loves this band is still going to love the new Rick Springfield song if he puts one out. So we'll play it for a little bit. We'll not like in a regular rotation, but we'll play it a couple times a day for a week or two. And that satisfies them. And then they also feel a little bit more relaxed when you start going, so Jesse's Girl, was that really about, so whatever the case may be, they're more amenable to
Exactly.
talk about that stuff because you've let them talk about the new stuff and you're exposing their new stuff a little bit. I mean, they get it. If I talk to Rick Springfield, he gets it. He knows he's not going to have six of these songs end up being radio hits, and he knows that. But
Exactly.
he also finds out, he also, knows that you're making an effort to expose some of his newer stuff as well as the hits that have played over and over and over again.
Well, I had an artist I took to Denver once, and I was not best friends with the program director there, but he did agree to have us bring the artist by. And he went through all the hits that this artist had, blah 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 blah. And we were there to promote the new album, the new single. And he had told me off air that he wasn't going to play it while the artist was there. And now I'm in a situation where the artist wants to hear the radio station play the song while we're there. I don't know what
Uh,
went on, but thankfully he came to his senses and he did play the song while the artist was there. I just think that would be disrespectful. If you want
totally.
to have the artist come in, you can talk about all that stuff, but you need to plug the new stuff and you should at least spin it once while he's there.
In the
Because everything
grand
gets
scheme of
called.
things, you're not going to lose your audience because you're playing an artist, especially if it's an artist they know. It makes sense to be on your station. I
And he's
never
in the
got that.
studio. You're talking to him.
Yeah, yeah. I never got that mentality. I really didn't. It's two guys at a mic. I'm Jim Ryan. He's Mark Rizzo. It's music and more, covering stuff that we have come across in our career in the music business. Mine being on the radio side, Mark being on the record label side, and we're talking about our main focus today has been our first celebrity encounters, weird encounters, whatever the case may be,
Crazy
both in the
stuff.
business and out of the business.
Who
Um,
caused the biggest stir as an artist when he came up to Sirius?
the biggest stir in a good way or a bad way?
The buzz in the hallway, maybe people downstairs, tighter security.
Well, I still to this day I'm amazed that the first time Taylor Swift came to the office, she was like 14 and she
Wow.
had a guitar and she sat in the lobby just waiting for some people to come out and meet her and listen to her music. And she has since been back there where she comes up to the freight elevator and
Sure.
all sorts of security around her. Wasn't the buzz. I remember the one night I was covering was around the holidays, and I was covering an event for another programmer, and it was a Tony Orlando event,
Hmm.
and Bruce Springsteen was coming in to do some recording for his channel. And Tony always wanted to meet Bruce, and Bruce always wanted to meet Tony, and I'm literally standing between the two as they're chatting. That was a weird, surreal moment. Um, and Tony's a nice guy, and Bruce is a nice, humble guy. He's pretty laid back and open and friendly. So that was interesting. But biggest stir, I don't know, probably somebody that was on Howard Stern um, caused caused a big stir. You know,
Well, if I can go back to before the record label, when I mentioned being at the airport and would see all the celebrities that would fly in from LA to New York. But the biggest place, I should say, the biggest reaction in the place, how the word spread when this person got off the plane and he was mobbed. And you're talking before 9/11 and major security issues.
right? So you could go
But
right down to the plane.
back in the day, yeah, you could meet them
Yeah.
at the plane, you could do all that stuff. But when this person came off, the place mobbed. I don't know where people came from. The people who worked in the restaurants came down. Uh, Bus drivers parked the bus and they ran out. You want to guess who it was? It was
Hmm.
not music related.
Was it actor?
No, you get one more guess.
Hmm. Muhammad Ali.
Exactly. Very
Really?
good. How did you know that?
I don't know. I just took a guess. Maybe it's because I'm reading the book, the Bill O'Reilly book about
Right, I have the book too. Yeah,
the death of Muhammad Ali, Elvis Presley, and John Lennon. And I'm
yep.
on the
It's a good
Muhammad
book.
Ali section right now. And maybe because he was such a massive celebrity.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And he was so kind. This is before cell phones and stuff, but I have his autograph. I think he must have signed 200 autographs. And you forget, I mean, he was pretty big.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
stood out in that crowd, and they they loved him. That was probably
Wow.
the biggest celebrity that came through the airport. That I mean, I saw a lot of people from Bob Hope to Lucille Ball to all kinds of people, but nothing like Muhammad Ali.
I will tell you the most bizarre moment that I ever had in my career. And it had nothing to do with me interviewing anybody, but I was working at Sirius XM and my office was up on the 37th floor. You had been there before. I was on 37, then 36, back to 37, finally back to 36, like I'm moving every couple of years. I come down to record some stuff from my office, and we had those stairs that connected 37 and 36. Remember those stairs out there right by
Yeah,
the,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, beautiful. Yeah,
So Howard Stern had his office or his studios back,
right to
but
the
in the
left. I
lobby,
remember. Yep,
yeah, in the lobby is sitting, okay, because of every programming that we had at Sirius XM, we had all sorts of different programming. And over the years, they put up curtains for any studios that had risque programming because a somebody in the marketing department or someone in administration was walking through there one day and walked by a studio and there was a naked girl in the studio and they were like, so they put up curtains in case you had any kind of programming because we had everything on Sirius from one end to the other. So anyway, I come down and sitting on one end of the lobby are a whole bunch of nuns from the Catholic channel. And sitting on the other end of the lobby are these women from the legal brothel in
wow,
Nevada waiting to go on Howard Stern channel. And I'm thinking to
that's funny.
myself, would I like to be a fly on the wall here? You got a bunch of nuns sitting next to a bunch of women that work at a brothel. It was just such a juxtaposition. It's like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. Where I work, this is nuts,
That's funny.
you know?
Howard should have had them all in. That would have been a great episode. That would have
It
been
was
funny.
just like if you could, and I didn't even take a picture. It was just so bizarre to me. I was trying, and each each of them were in their little groups and they weren't interacting with each other, but it had to be weird for them. They had to because the nuns were all in habits. They weren't like
What were
nuns
the
that were
girls wearing? The other girls?
well, they were dressed, but they were dressed rather scantily, but they were dressed.
Both ends
Um,
of the spectrum, man.
yeah, total both ends of the spectrum. So it was really bizarre and interesting. Anyway, two guys and a mic. This is episode 2, and I think it's going well. We're going to have guests in the future. We have a lot of friends, both celebrity wise or just record label friend wise or radio wise, that can come on and tell a lot of stories, interesting
Some stories may
stories.
be better than ours. Some
Yeah,
people,
about some
fitness
interesting
and a lot of
people,
stuff.
some crazy things that happen in this business, but thinking about stuff that's going on also in the world. Did you ever watch that show Peaky Blinders?
I saw some of it when I was out in California. I'd seen some of it, and that guy is now a major, major star because he was
Yeah,
in that.
Killian Murphy
Yeah.
is his name, and I was so happy that I was reading the other day. Let me see if I can find it here. I had it, and where is this? Is this it? He's coming back. There's going to be a Peaky Blinders movie,
That's what I heard.
and he's already agreed to come back and reprise his role as the lead guy on that show, and it's going to be a movie. I think it's going to be on Netflix, actually, because I think the series originally ran on Netflix, but there's no timetable as to when it's going to be done, so they haven't even started filming yet. But I'm looking forward to that.
Well, I saw a couple of episodes, but I never saw it from the beginning. Is it just basically like an Irish Sopranos?
Yeah, basically, he's Tommy, the leader, the smart guy in the family, um, of some Irish hoodlums,
Uh-huh.
basically, and he tries to expand the family business, and yeah, it is basically that, set back in the 1800s, I believe, is when they
Wow.
started this. So it's a period piece, but so well done, and he's such a good actor.
He's very good. He's got
So
a
I
great
thought
look
that
to him
was,
too. He's an interesting look.
yeah, you got to go watch that series if you haven't done that. There's series I keep telling you about, series that you should watch and you don't. You've never watched
Mm.
Yellowstone yet, right?
I haven't watched Yellowstone. I think the
Oh,
last streaming thing, I forgot. We've seen a couple of them, but not all the popular ones.
well, the problem is you have to have all the different services. Before you know it, you're paying just as much as you have with a cable bill,
I
you
saw
know?
there's something about the Brat Pack that's out. That's supposed to be pretty good. I heard there was a couple of other ones that are pretty
Did you
interesting
hear
out there.
Molly Ringwald say she wouldn't make those movies again?
Oh, I didn't hear that. She said that?
Yeah, she said it's very difficult for her to talk to her kids about those movies that she made in, the 80s, and what happened on those movies. But it was a period time, It's like, yeah, okay, but it's like Tom Hanks also recently said that he would not do Philadelphia again. It's like it's called acting, all right?
Wow.
You're acting.
I didn't know Tom
So,
Hanks said that.
yeah, he said it's not fair, to do that. He wouldn't do that because he's a straight guy playing a gay guy. But it's called acting.
Oh, so you would have to be gay to play the gay guy.
Yeah,
Oh,
but that's, I
totally get it.
mean, for years, look, people thought Rock Hudson for years was a straight guy, a ladies' man, and we know he wasn't. But it's acting. It's what it is. I don't get that, but
I don't understand,
whatever.
but everything is much different. So I guess if you're gay, you can't play a straight guy, but if you're straight, you can't.
Some people say that. Some people say. I know. I read the woman who did Friends. The One of the big creators of Friends was a woman who said we couldn't do that kind of show today. I would not do that show today. Um, if I had to go back, I wouldn't do that show because she said it was too, Caucasian. There wasn't color in
Well,
there.
yeah,
So I know it gets to be a sticky. Here's a good one for you. You ready to this? Do you wanna buy the full house? House? It's up for
I
sale
heard, was
again.
it like $5 million or something?
6.5 million it's on sale for.
Wow. I'm still saving my money by the Brady Bunch house.
That's probably, I don't know. The full houses in San Francisco. I don't know what the value is, but 6.5 is pretty good. It's back on the market again. It's not the first time, and it's actually changed hands a couple times, but it was built back in 1900. But if you want to own it, you can.
Interesting. I don't know.
6.5.
Like I said, I'll still hold out for the Brady Bunch house. But I did see they showed the All in the Family house, but it's
In
not for
Queens,
sale.
right?
Yeah, right. They showed that house, and I saw some other houses that that are still existing that people
Yeah,
drive by and say, "Hey, that's the house from some such and such."
I found the Blue Bloods house before.
There's another show I never watched, although I did see them film it in Manhattan once.
Yeah, I think it's if I remember correctly when I looked it up and then I've been by it. It's in Brooklyn.
Hmm. Well,
Couldn't tell you the
you
street
can
right
take
now.
tours. I think in LA you can take tours to see a lot of the houses that were used in films and stuff.
Oh yeah.
I think the house from uh, one of those horror movies, Halloween or something. I think you can pass that house. I saw one that came across my scroll of the house that they used for Thriller.
Oh
So I
really?
guess you can pass that. Yeah.
Well, I remember when it was such a popular show, looking back um, at Modern Family,
Sure.
and they had three basic houses that were featured on that, three basic households. But when you looked up the facades for the houses, they were like 30 miles from each other. They were in
Yeah.
the LA area, but they were
Yeah.
they were not close. If that was that family, was depicted to be relatively close in the same area,
It would have never happened.
but the houses weren't that close.
Well, I think you can still drive to Staten Island and see the front of the Corleone mansion
Yeah, which was
in The
supposed to be
Godfather.
Long Island originally, but in the film.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Long
Yeah, because
Island.
remember he goes over that causeway, and I think it's the what causeway is that now?
Rockaway
No,
by the
not the
beach.
Jones Beach Causeway, but the bridge. It's supposedly out on the island, or it was depicted to be that way.
So you're
That
talking
wasn't
about,
depicted to be Staten Island back then.
is that where they kill Sonny?
Yeah, yeah. If I'm right on that, I did go once when I was working, not even the radio, but I was working for my uncle had the one you went when we all went to
Normandy.
Normandy. My uncle Jim was with us, and he had a moving furniture installation company, and we were doing a job in the Helmsley building right above Grand Central Station, and we were in the conference room that the Corleone when the whole five families got together
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah,
they
yeah.
brokered that piece.
Sure.
Yeah, they filmed it there, and we were in that conference room,
That's pretty cool.
which was
In
pretty
fact,
interesting.
I just read that for Godfather 2, they wanted Marlon Brando to play young, young Vito Corleone, but he didn't want to do
Really?
it. And he was 47 at the time. And he did want to go back, I guess, and try to do an earlier version of Don Corleone. And that's how Robert De Niro got in. Interesting.
See, now another show you should watch if you haven't watched it. And it's only one season, about 8 or 9 episodes. It was on Paramount. It's called The Offer.
I saw that. That was about the
Oh, okay.
Godfather.
The
I did
making of the
watch that.
Godfather.
So
Yeah.
I've got selected tastes as far as, but that was a good one too. In
Yeah,
fact,
but
I think that guy just died. One of the characters in that
he
movie,
did.
right?
Well, the
He
guy,
just passed away.
the guy that Miles Teller portrayed, Ruddy, the
Right.
producer, he
Is he the
who
one that passed?
was the brains behind Hogan's Heroes, believe it or
Right.
not. He was also the producer of The Godfather and got that film made by Paramount because nobody wanted to make it.
Hmm.
Him, the real life guy, passed away. Yes, not
That's
Miles
what I
Teller,
read.
by the way.
What a movie!
Yeah,
And I also read that Mr. Coppola had, I think it was in Cannes. Is it Cannes or Kane?
it's Khan.
Cannes, right?
It's
He,
Khan.
he just debuted some film there that he poured most of his money into, and he was upset that he didn't get a standing ovation because it did not go over too well. And he said when a studio doesn't want to give you the money, and the producer or the director, or whatever, is going to go into his own pocket, that's usually not a good sign.
Right. I
So
think it's Khan. Maybe it's Can, but I think it's Khan.
can con tomato tomato.
It's
Anyway,
weird because when we went to Normandy, we stopped in the town of Cannes, but that's not where the film festival is. It's
right.
down along the south of France. So maybe it's Cannes.
Well,
Maybe it is.
apparently, I guess he didn't get the reviews or the response he had wanted, but he dug into his pocket for this one. So we'll see how that develops.
Well, speaking of movies, you ready for this? I can't believe they're actually going to make a third one of these. I didn't even know there was two. I knew there was one, but I didn't know there was another. Angry Birds, the
I got to
third
catch up on
Angry
the Angry
Birds
Birds.
movie with
Got to
Jason
catch up.
Sudeikis and Josh Gad.
Money in the Bank, man. How easy is that? You just have to
Oh,
do the voice.
yeah. And by the way, Jason Sudeikis, phenomenal in in oh
Right.
now I can't remember. It slipped my tongue now.
I know.
Oh,
I, know. I didn't see that one either.
oh, Ted Lasso. That's
Right.
it.
Right.
The soccer thing. You have to watch that. That is so good. So funny.
Interesting.
You got a whole list of stuff to
I got a
start
lot to
watching
do. I
and
gotta
catching
have to
up.
get off this and start watching movies.
Gonna stop the podcast. Two guys and a mic. Jim Ryan, Mark Rizzo. We have more than 60 years. It keep changing. It keeps changing, but I think it's safe to say it's more than 60 years in the music business between radio and records. And we're just bringing you some of the stories and things that we've encountered in our career, some of the exciting stuff, some of the not so exciting, and then other things that just happen to catch us and what we might be interested in. You still working on that guest list?
Yeah, well, I told you some of the names, but I'll be adding different names to it. But before we get into that, I did want to ask you: is there somebody that you always wanted to interview that you didn't get the
Yeah,
chance to?
Tom Petty.
Tom Petty.
I always wanted to see him in concert, never did, and would have loved to talk to him and never had the chance.
What about somebody that you interviewed that you were not a particular fan of, but after interviewing them, you became a bigger fan?
Hmm. Hmm. Not a big fan of, but then became a fan.
Or how about the opposite? Somebody you liked and then interviewed and didn't like them anymore.
The first time I interviewed Avril Lavigne, I didn't want to do it again.
Hmm.
But thankfully, as she got older, she got more mature, she became a much nicer person. Um, so I was like after the first one, I was just like, I don't ever want to talk to her again. It was like pulling teeth.
Well, he was not on our label, but there was an artist in the 80s, a good friend of Rick Springfield's, by the way, who was out there, had a couple of big records, and I used to hear horror stories about people who had to work with him, people who had to deal with him, and I I remember there was an in store that he was supposed to be at, and he was on a different record label, as I said. And I guess back in the day, the person that put up the display and stuff got so angry at him, he tore the display down and said, "I'm not going to do this." And the guy went home. But
Really?
you got to be a pretty much of a pain in the neck. But
Well, tell me an artist that you had to spend a bunch of time with and just wasn't nice to you. Like I know you guys used to take artists, you would take artists around as a promotion guy, visiting
yeah,
various radio stations, trying to work things out, but you're spending time probably driving from city to city with some of these
it can be
guys.
very uncomfortable if you're with an artist who's not happy about his deal with the record label, or not
Right.
happy that he's getting up in the morning, or not happy. I mean, I thankfully could always try to put them in a good mood and get them up and get them excited. You always try to give them a piece of good news in the morning. You tell them that the song is at 13 tonight, or blah blah
Right.
blah. But there was an artist on Arista who I did not have a lot of stuff with her. Let's put it at that. It was not Whitney Houston, but there was another artist, an African American artist, and I believe at the time she did not want a white Caucasian person to take her around.
And you had to do it.
And I had a local guy up in Boston who said she wouldn't even look at me. And then I think something had happened and they had to go to a doctor's office. And he had to like wait outside the waiting room because she didn't want to be in the same room with him. And
Oh my God.
ironically, I believe her father was a pastor or something. But that's the story I heard, that she was not very nice.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I know people can have bad days, and we never expect our favorite artist or an artist, that we like to they get looked upon as if they don't have those normal human things, but some of them can raise it to an art form, you know, and just be difficult to begin with because they want to be difficult.
Well, yeah, I see the part where, and I think I've said this on the first one, or perhaps prior to this, that, people are infatuated with fame.
Hmm.
Fame is the greatest aphrodisiac in the world. I mean, like, you would think it's money, but I truly believe people love famous people, being around famous people, meeting famous people. And the person who's famous, or the artist, they have to realize that for the person that's so excited to meet them, that's a moment in their life that they're going to remember the rest of their life. I
Yeah.
mean, you and I have been blessed. We've met a lot of people. It's like, okay, it's just another day at the office. Once in a while, we'll be excited about that particular person that we may really be a fan of. But sometimes if they're rude, it could really, blow it for that one person, that fan who's got their one moment in their life that they're meeting somebody famous.
You know,
And they should keep that in mind.
Steve Perry told me a story. Remember he tried to come back with that album Traces a few years ago.
I worked with,
And yeah, for a while, he became a recluse when um, pretty much the love of his life was dealing with a
right.
terminal illness. And he's a big baseball fan, and he told this story, and he was at this ball game, the San Francisco Giants.
I think I've seen it
And
on YouTube. They start singing the song, right?
yeah, so he went to the game, and these two women were so excited to be realizing that Steve Perry from Journey was sitting, like one row near them, and came over and asked him for an autograph and a picture. And he was very short and curt with them, saying, "No, I'm here watching a baseball game. I'm not doing that." And his partner, who's I believe now deceased, but at the time was
Then she
sick,
corrected him, right?
she corrected him, basically saying, this is a moment for these people in a lifetime.
That's what I said.
Then, and you can't take a couple of minutes out to get, make their day, make their life. When are you going to finish this music you talk that you keep telling me you're going to get done? I would give anything to have more time. You have time. And so he just it kind of woke him up, he said. And, he went back and apologized and found the two women and made their day. But it woke him up to realize, it's a couple of minutes of time, of my time, which I have plenty of, and she doesn't have much. And I believe she may have passed away like 4 or 5 months later. I mean, it was that kind of situation. And so that really changed his whole perspective. I'm not telling it exactly right, but I'm getting the gist of what he said with
Right,
the
because I read
story.
that too. That was part of the
Yeah.
bio. I remember when we were
Yeah.
working. But
And
I thought you were referring to a thing. He was at a ball game once, and he was like in the stands, and they started to play "Don't Stop Believing," and he jumped up and pointing to him, and he's,
oh no, it wasn't that.
mouthing the words to it. But that
It
was pretty
wasn't
cool.
that. It
But
wasn't
I,
that.
I mean, I've been with artists that have been interrupted while they're eating. I was with an artist who went to the men's room and somebody bothered them at the stall. I mean, I think you got to have a little bit,
Yeah. Right. It
you have to kind of respect the space.
was like my Eric Clapton
Um,
thing. I didn't say anything until he said something to me. So
but the main thing was he washed his hands. I think that
that's
was,
true. We both did.
there you go.
So,
But I
but
remember when I worked at the airport, as I said, I saw hundreds. I have a huge autograph book of people we met. But we met Paul Newman, and he said, "I won't sign an autograph, but I'll buy you a beer." He's pretty cool.
wow.
Yeah, he never
Wow.
signed anything. He wouldn't sign anything.
You know what, Gene Hack? I was once doing a job for my uncle, unloading a tractor trailer of furniture, desk furniture, to go into an office. And we're in the back of the truck. There's like, five of us because we're moving stuff. There's steady line going in and out, completely removed from radio. Gene Hackman stopped by. He stopped by and we were working, and he was just, first of all, he was, I guess he had done something similar to that, trying to support his career when he got started in
Oh,
New York. He worked some, labor jobs like that. And he went down the street and bought like 10 pizzas and brought them back for all the guys.
wow, nice
Yeah, he
guy.
was just nice. He was a real nice guy. He just stepped up, and was very cool. Another time, we're talking about celebrity encounters and interviews. I'll give you one at Sirius XM. I got the chance to interview Mark Harmon, the actor who started
Oh, yeah, that's the
NCIS,
show
and I
that you used to love. You used to
love
watch
that
it.
show.
I
Love that
remember.
show from when he started on JAG. So he came by, and it was going to be about the ending of the season or the new season coming up. And so I interviewed him for the Pulse, and he was more fascinated in the job that I did in radio because his dad was a radio guy. When he was growing up as a kid, his dad was a radio announcer and used to go to the station, back time to the news. So like, he was like so enthusiastic about being at a radio station and what I was doing. And yet here I am interviewing this guy who is, a big time actor from Hollywood in one of the big shows on TV. But he couldn't have been nicer. Couldn't have been a nicer guy.
That's nice. I'll tell you one about Paul McCartney. I would, when we worked at Arista Records, which was on 57th and 5th, if you looked out the big windows in the conference room, sooner or later you saw everybody walking down Fifth Avenue. And you'd see Paul McCartney right out on Fifth Avenue, hailing a cab all by himself. He'd get in the cab. But I learned, obviously, and sadly enough, that when he's announced to go somewhere, like we were taking him to Scott Shannon at PLJ, then you have to really gear up for
Right.
security and everything else. And at the time, I was with another Beckett rep, Joe Rainey, who sadly has passed on. So me and Joe Rainey are going to go to PLJ. We're going to meet Paul McCartney. We're going to bring him up to the station. And I think it was like what you said. We waited outside by the freight elevator, and he should be here any minute. And these two SUVs pull up, these black SUVs with tinted windows. The first car opens up. These two guys jump out. I swear, Jim, I think they had Uzis. I swear they were carrying heavy artillery. And the
Oh.
second car, he got right out. He went right into the elevator. They closed the door on Joe Rainey and I. They went right up. We were nothing. They knew where they were going. They were like commandos. And I
Oh,
guess
wow.
I think we actually said, I think they let us go upstairs to the waiting room. We were able to hear the interview from the other room, but these guys don't play around, and it's scary because of everything that they go through. You get a lot of crazy people.
Yeah,
So
you
I
know
don't
what?
know if he had some threats, but they weren't taking any chances.
Interesting enough, though, I've run into enough artists who one of the reasons they love New York City is they can walk around a lot
Independently.
and not get bothered like they would if they were walking down the street in, let's say, St. Louis or, you know, I think part of it is there's just so many people in such a rush to get places in New York.
That they don't
They're
pay
not paying
attention.
attention,
Right.
you know?
Well, I think that's why when he's hailing a cab, it's easy. Not somebody's going to be prepared, God forbid, to do harm to him.
Right.
But I mean, my other buddy and artist that we'll talk about as we get into it, Barry Manilow, always talks about when he walks down the street, like the garbage man, and say, "Hey Barry, my wife loves you." He says, "It feels good to be in New York." So,
I think we have to get your buddy Jimmy, the security guy from the movie studios. We have to have him on one day too.
oh, he's got great stories of. I mean, it's outside our topic of music, but if we talk about celebrities, he's got great stories because he's a security guard, not only for Universal, but he does stuff on the side. And he's got great stories of some of these people because he'll get hired by the jewelry company because these artists and actresses will, I mean, I guess they go pick out the jewelry they're going to wear for the Academy Awards, and that's what
Yeah,
he does. And he's at instances where they send him. He's got to stay with the actress all day, make sure that nothing happens to the jewelry. And I always tease him about it because it's, do you go into the ladies' room with her? Do you make sure? But he's had instances where the next day he had to go back and get the jewelry because they didn't return it. It's
interesting.
unbelievable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll get him on and talk. It's two guys and a mic. Jim Ryan, Mark Rizzo. It is music and more, mostly about our time in the music industry from the record side, the radio side, and whatever we feel like talking about on a given episode, which I believe the next one we're going to wrangle in a guest, our first guest for this adventure. Not
Find
sure
someone
who it's
who's
going to
got the
be yet.
same stories we have and experiences, which will be good.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll do that so that you can expect for episode 3. Remember to find us anywhere you get your podcast, but here on our YouTube channel, ring the bell, subscribe, help us out, and spread the word. And we'll be bringing these to you, we hope, weekly.
Yeah.
That's the
And I
plan.
did say we will be giving away a car. You may want to continue to say that.
Yeah, I'm
For,
surprised you're saying that. It's a good thing it's your car and you own it.
I didn't say whose car it was or what kind of car it is, but when we get to our 1 millionth subscriber, they'll get a car.
Okay,
Hey, it could be a Hot Wheels car. It could be something. We'll
that's
come up with
true. A
something.
Hot Wheels car. Get a set of them.
Sure, we'll give them away like Oprah. You get a car. You get a car. You get a
Look under your seat. See if
car.
there's a special tag.
Hey, it's a small podcast. We got to start small.
Yeah,
We'll
that's
get that.
true. One day we'll just talk about the records you have hanging behind you.
Yeah,
I have a
and
few
stories
behind
behind each
me.
one of them.
Yeah, there's stories with the ones I have too, but I don't have a storage unit like you to collect them. You know,
Well,
I got rid of mine. Believe it or not, we'll do that another time, but people will pay. for them. It's bizarre, but I'll tell that story
But
next
I don't
time.
even think they give them away much more anymore. I think
No,
things
there's
are
not a lot of them.
so
No.
different in the business, and we'll get into that. We'll talk about how artists have changed, how music changes, how
Yeah.
how A&R signs and finds talent. It's much different than the way that I remember, as well as you. And in some situations, it's sad. It's sad because it's changed.
Two Guys and a Mic with Mark and Jim. Thanks so much for listening.
Can't wait for the next one.